Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King is nearly complete. We got a story here from Forbes. 3 strikes and the FTC is out. A third loss means Microsoft could soon close the Activision deal. Basically, the whole thing is it's talking about, it's a little hyperbole, but it says the losses are coming fast and furious for the FTC, which has been pulling out all the stops to do anything it can to prevent Microsoft from closing its $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. They need to put that in there, but whatever. Now, one final loss means the deal could likely close before its appeal actually takes place. First, the FTC failed to win an injunction to stop the acquisition after it presented a lengthy case to a judge. They did a terrible job with that, by the way, but whatever. Then the FTC filed an emergency motion to stay the deal after the first loss, which it also lost. Finally, late on Friday, the FTC launched another attempt to stop the deal before appeal, this time before the Ninth Circuit Court. Well, this means that Microsoft is now free to close the Activision Blizzard King deal, likely as soon as next week, provided it can sort out the final bit of business with the UK's CMA, which previously rejected the acquisition on cloud-based gaming grounds. The FTC has not lost its actual appeal, but the fact that the deal can essentially happen now means that any further action that could be taken would be far less relevant than blocking it now, as if it was granted these injunctions. It might have actually killed the deal. Now, that's almost certainly not going to happen. I got a story here from The Verge. Sony's confidential PlayStation secrets just spilled because of a Sharpie, which is, kind of weird, but, I mean, there you go. Sony highly confidential. This is all fucked up, but Sony's highly confidential information about its PlayStation business has just been revealed by mistake. As part of the FTC versus Microsoft hearing, they supplied a document from Jim Ryan that included redacted details on the margins Sony shares with publishers, its Call of Duty revenues, and even the cost of developing some of its own games. And it talks about, it looks like someone redacted the documents with a black Sharpie, but when you scan them in, it's easy to see some of the redactions. Oops. But anyway, the document shows that Horizon Forbidden West apparently cost $212 million over 5 years with 300 employees, and The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million with around 200 employees. It's not just how much games cost to make this been revealed here. Sony says 1 million PlayStation gamers play nothing but Call of Duty. My colleague, Sean Hollister's analyzed, I'll put all this in the description box if you guys, I'll link all this stuff in the description box if you want to read it for yourself, but 2021, over 14 million users by device. Some of the stuff is a little unclear because the guy's trying to read it and stuff, and it's, anyway. Over 14 million users spent 30% or more of their time playing Call of Duty. Over 6 million users spent more than 70% of their time on Call of Duty, and about 1 million users spent 100% of their gaming time on Call of Duty. 2021, Call of Duty players spent an average, it goes on. It talks about, there's a little more relevant stuff right here. It says, we already knew the figures over, this is basically how much Call of Duty is worth to PlayStation. We already knew the figures was over $1 billion, but the document suggests Call of Duty was worth $800 million for PlayStation revenue in just the US during 2021. And we think the document says $1.5 billion globally. And that's just the game alone, but when you count accessories, subscriptions, and everything else, that then jumps to what appears to our eyes to be $15.9 billion a year, or perhaps $13.9 billion. Either way, it's a huge amount. That is an almost unbelievable amount. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's freaking crazy. But anyway, this is how much does Sony share with third-party publishers like Activision. This one's fuzzy enough we can't confidently translate it, but the typical margin looks like it might be 10%, which falls in line with what we've heard before and that kind of stuff. But anyway, it just goes on. It continues on a little more, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I'll link this in the description box. Read the whole thing for yourself. I've already gone 3.5 minutes on this. Look, I fully expected Microsoft to win these appeals and stuff, or to get the appeals denied, or the injunction stayed, and all that stuff. Just because, realistically speaking, yes, this obviously shows that Sony gets a ton of money from like Call of Duty, but there's nothing stopping them if Microsoft were to make Call of Duty exclusive, which they may or may not do. It depends. They've never done it with Minecraft, for example. But that amount of money, I mean, that's freaking crazy. But we'll see. It's not doom and gloom. You got people acting like it's going to be the end of the industry and stuff like that. And it's not going to be anything of the sort, because there's nothing stopping Sony from making their own first-person shooter, bringing SOCOM back or whatever. There's nothing stopping them from partnering with EA to try to resurrect Battlefield and get that going and stuff. I mean, there's various avenues. This kind of stuff, it's like you can't have a monopoly, which is what some people are trying to basically argue, if competition's allowed and stuff. I kind of get where they're coming from, because this ain't a great thing for the industry, but I don't think it's a terrible thing either. I guess we'll see what's going to happen, to be determined, or however you want to phrase it. But thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.